Welcome to this edition of Legislative Report. My name is Anthony Tezak. Public officials at all levels of government have a responsibility to safeguard the tax dollars with which they've been entrusted. This means they should make every possible effort to keep funds from being misappropriated, and they should adopt policies that make government more efficient and effective. Here to talk with me today about his efforts to streamline government and enact meaningful reforms to protect taxpayers is State Representative Ryan Mackenzie. Representative, welcome.
Thanks for having me again, Anthony.
Now, I want to begin today with talking about some big news. You were involved in a major overhaul of our state's unemployment compensation system back in 2012, correct?
That's correct.
And a recent report shows that your reform efforts paid off big, and we're now saving taxpayers millions of dollars.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really important, I think, with government reforms to once you go through and enact them, all too often we forget about them. And so this was an instance where we had a chance to look back, see how things have actually progressed over the past year or a little over a year now. And they're working very well. And so that's great news for the Commonwealth. The problem we were facing, it was a $3.8 billion debt that we had accrued in our unemployment compensation fund. That debt was owed to the federal government. They had borrowed or lent us money during the recession. And so here we had an opportunity to pass a series of reforms to help eliminate that debt, make sure we kept taxes down on job creators, and make sure people got the benefits that they needed.
And these are not small numbers either. Act 60 of 2012, one of the reforms you played a key role in crafting, is saving taxpayers, as of right now, $380 million a year. Another one of your efforts, Act 6 of 2011, that saved a total of $400 million since it's been enacted. These are all courtesy of DCED. How did you do it?
Yeah, so, starting with Act 6, that was the one that went first, actually. And so that saved, as you mentioned, $120 million a year. That was passed in 2011. Now, to date, it's over $400 million in savings. And what that did, really, the big thing, or the most notable thing at least, was that we required individuals who were collecting unemployment compensation to actually verify that they were searching for work. So it's what we call a work search requirement. And Pennsylvania was the only state in the entire country that did not have such a provision in its law. So we put that in place, requiring individuals to look for up to three jobs each week and filing that with the Department of Labor and Industry. And again, that really cut down on some of the fraud and waste in the system where individuals were simply collecting, weren't even interested in finding a new job. And so again, now we've been able to curtail that and again, secure money for individuals who are actually struggling and in between jobs. So that was Act 6. You also mentioned Act 60. Act 60 was a much more substantial reform, and so did a series of things. It refinanced our debt that we had to the federal government. It enacted a series of reforms and made a number of tax changes. So on the refinancing of our debt, that debt that I mentioned, $3.8 billion that we owed to the federal government, we were being charged interest of 4.4%. And for you and all the viewers at home, I don't know who's earning 4.4% interest nowadays in our markets. And so what we were able to do was we were able to refinance that debt that we owed to the federal government and issue debt in the private market at less than 1.8%, sometimes on the order of 1.2%. We have a couple different issuances there. And so with that money that was issued, we were able to save right out of the gate over $150 million just by refinancing. Then we enacted a series of reforms that saved about $380 million per year. And what we were able to do with that money that we saved is we just kept taxes level. So businesses weren't going to continue to see escalating income and tax increases, which is what would have happened if we had not done anything. And so with those reforms, that $380 million in savings, we were able to keep taxes level. So we were still collecting all the money coming in, but since we weren't paying out $380 million per year, we were able to turn that around and use that to pay off our debt. And so we're going to be on track to pay off that debt in just a number of years. And then as soon as that debt is paid off, then we'll actually be able to bring down taxes on employers and employees. So everybody across the spectrum who's working is actually going to see a tax reduction as soon as these reforms fully flush through the system. And again, we're on track. We're saving everybody money. A great series of reforms. So very happy to see that everything's working out actually better than planned.
Now, what's really interesting about these two pieces of legislation is you were really working on these before you were elected to the House. Act 6, although it passed before you became a legislator, you actually wrote that as a policy director when you worked for DCED. And then Act 60, you wrote, and then you had an opportunity to vote on it after you were sworn in as a member of the General Assembly.
That's correct. So I worked at Labor and Industry before coming to the House, and really provided me a very unique opportunity to see the inside of policy making here in Harrisburg, and it helped prepare me very well for my job as state representative. So I was able to hit the ground running on a lot of these different areas that I was working on, and take the lead on some of them in the House. And again, so I was happy to help Act 60 get through the House in just my first couple months in office. Again, a very significant reform that's working very well here.
Now, it was almost a $4 billion shortfall. How were you able to find the money to solve this?
Well, you know, we talked through a lot of that, and I think, again, the key there was not raising taxes on our employers or employees. They already have some of the highest taxes in the entire country. So really finding reforms was the key, and it's something that took a lot of hard work, a lot of negotiating, a lot of compromise and discussions, but at the end of the day, those reforms are actually what saved the money, and then those savings are what allowed us to pay down the debt.
And since this has been enacted, from what I understand, 13,000 people have paid back into the system.
Yeah, so, you know, this is a different element of that reform. There was something called UC Tax Amnesty Program that allowed individuals who had over-collected. So there were instances where the prime example is somebody goes back to a job after receiving unemployment compensation. Maybe they didn't notify Labor and Industry, so they continued to receive their unemployment checks after they were employed again, so they had been overpaid. And so obviously that was an overpayment that we wanted to collect back as a state, and we said we're going to offer a one-time tax amnesty program. It's something that's been done in other parts of state tax collection. And so we said that if you pay that money back, there will be reduced penalties in some instances, and even no penalties if it wasn't your fault, if it was really a mistake of the government. And so with that amnesty program, we collected about $15 million. It cost us about $1 million to run the program, to advertise it, to get the word out, and issue new collection statements, and again, collected over $15 million. So a great return on our investment there for the Commonwealth on money that they had been trying to collect. Labor and Industry had been trying to collect that money in some instances for years, and they weren't able to get it back. So once we went to people and said, you know, no or reduced penalties in this instance, we were able to free up some of that money and get it back to the Commonwealth.
So let's move on to some other government reform initiatives. Since you've been elected into the House, you've really made that top priority of yours to protect the taxpayer. And recently, you took steps to guard taxpayers when they make tax payments. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, that is one of my priorities. The four things that I like to focus on are strengthening education, protecting taxpayers, helping create jobs, and reforming government. So in that reforming government category, some of those UC reforms would fall in that category. And another thing that I've done is helping protect local taxpayers. And so what we've seen is a problem. It's a growing epidemic in our area where embezzlement, fraud, all of that's occurring at the local level. And sometimes it goes unnoticed or unchecked for years on end. And so what we did was we wanted to pass a bill through the House. It got through the House earlier in the year and really required that individuals you know, who are going to be collecting these revenues, you know, they be held accountable if some of that money goes missing. And so it increased the criminal penalties for individuals by up to 5 years imprisonment if they're caught stealing money from local taxpayers. And so that's awaiting action in the Senate, and we're hopeful that they're going to take that up.
And that was an amendment to House Bill 1590, correct?
So that was a standalone bill that I had. 1590, also in that vein of protecting local taxpayers, we said that individuals making their checks payable or money orders payable to a local government entity should not make it out to an individual. And this is hard to believe, but this is what goes on every day in local municipalities, is they make checks payable. In our area, our tax collector sends out bills saying you can make checks payable to the individual's name, comma, tax collector. Well, that makes a lot of people rightly uncomfortable because it's very easy to divert those funds if somebody is so inclined to their own personal account. And we saw it in my area in Lower Mackenzie Township. There was an instance where an individual was collecting sewer hookup fees and she deposited them into her own account. Over $2 million was diverted. And so really what I want to do is just say no more payments to an individual. You have to make it out to a position, a title, an office, something like that, that would not allow for those monies to be deposited into an individual account. And so that was amended onto 1590, and again, a positive reform to help protect local taxpayers.
And this sounds like it fits very well with House Bill 1863, which was your municipal theft legislation that passed the House a few months ago.
Yep, and so again, those two bills, I view it as a series of reforms that you're going to have to undertake to make sure that you're protecting local taxpayers. There's no silver bullet here, nothing that we can do that's going to stop every type of fraud going through that system. But if we can have a series of changes, hopefully we can crack down on it.
All right, Representative, thank you for joining us, and thank you for all the effort you put into safeguarding the taxpayer.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Anthony.
Anytime. That's all the time we have for today's program. If you have any questions about what you've just seen or any other state government-related matter, please contact Representative Mackenzie at his district office or online. His contact information will be on the screen in just a moment. Thanks for watching, and please join us again next time for another edition of Legislative Report.
Did you know that Act 16 of 1999 honors one of the greatest leaders in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives? The Matthew J. Ryan Legislative Office Building, once known as the Capitol Annex, is located next to the main Capitol building and honors the late Speaker of the House, Matthew J. Ryan. Those who visit this building will observe the magnificent architectural designs providing eloquence and grandeur to the building. Known as one of the greatest members in the history of the Pennsylvania State House, Matthew Ryan started his career in the legislature in 1963 and was elected Speaker in 1981. His charisma and knowledge will forever be reflected in the building now named after this great legislative leader. Now you know.
Did you know that Violet Oakley was the first female artist to receive a large commission for artwork done in a United States Capitol building? In 1902, Joseph Houston, designer and architect for the 3rd Harrisburg Capitol building, commissioned Violet Oakley to paint murals for the governor's reception room. He believed that Oakley's contribution would add interest to the building and act as an encouragement of women of the state. Prior to beginning her work for the Capitol, Oakley set out to England to conduct research for her murals. Upon return, she decided to center her artwork on William Penn and the founding of Pennsylvania. Oakley made sure that Penn's ideals of justice and peace could be seen throughout her work. In 1906, she completed 13 murals titled The Founding of the State of Liberty Spiritual and was placed in sequential order around the governor's reception room. These murals were some of the first to be installed in the Capitol. When Edwin Austin Abbey, another artist for the Capitol, died in 1911, Oakley was offered another opportunity to create murals for the unfinished Senate and Supreme Court chambers. Her work on the Senate murals, including International Understanding, was completed by 1919. Oakley then completed the Supreme Court murals, including the Divine Law, by 1927. Oakley is said to be the principal artist for the Capitol with a total of 43 murals on display. She remains one of the greatest muralists in the United States. Now you know.
Did you know that the chamber of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives contains a painting depicting the 24 hours of the day? Located in the center of the ceiling, the mural, titled The Hours, was created by artist Edwin Austin Abbey. This wonderful masterpiece charts the setting of the sun, moon, and the many stars that grace the heavens. 24 maidens, who each represent an hour of the day, begin each day in light and gladness and ends in solemn drapery carried on still shoulders. Now you know.
Hi, this is State Representative Ryan Mackenzie, and thank you for joining us on another episode of Legislative Report. Today we're here at Dorney Park and Wildwater Kingdom in South Whitehall Township, and I'm joined by Mike Fainall, the Vice President and General Manager of Dorney Park and Wildwater Kingdom. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Thanks for coming to the park. It's a beautiful day. You picked a great day to come.
Absolutely, and so this is a park with a lot of history here in the area. It's been here a long time. Why don't you start out by just telling us a little bit about the park and its history?
Sure, the park opened up in 1884. That's when Solomon Dorney officially called it Dorney Park. We've got a lot of old rides with a lot of history, such as the Whip behind us, which has been here since 1920. This park actually didn't used to have a gate around it. You could drive right through the middle of it, and we're standing right in front of where cars drove back in those days.
And so obviously the park's come a long way since then. It's a much larger operation. How many rides do you have here? How many people come through the park each year?
We've got over 100 rides and attractions, things that families can do of all ages. And we've got about 200 acres for people to enjoy here. Over 1 million people come to the park every year.
That's great. And so over 1 million people, where do these folks come from?
They come from all around the area. We definitely get a good contingent of people from the Lehigh Valley. We also get Philadelphia, New York, and Baltimore, Lancaster area. They come from all around.
Yep. And so you mentioned a lot of people from the area come and enjoy the park. I grew up here. I had a season pass when I was growing up. Is that still a big component of the park? A lot of people enjoy that?
Definitely. A lot of our guests take advantage of the season pass program and the value, and especially if you have small children coming out and visiting for a shorter period of time. I've got 2 kids that are 3 and 6, and they come out, we go over to Planet Snoopy, get some rides, and then we go home before they get tired.
Absolutely. I remember when I was growing up, in the summer we would be here almost every day at either the park or the water park. So definitely a great opportunity that we in the area love to take advantage of, and everybody should come out and enjoy the park during the summer. So let's see, behind us you mentioned the Whip. What's your favorite ride here at the park?
Oh, that's a tough one. I would say it's a toss-up between Talon and Steel Force, 2 of our world-class roller coasters. I'd probably give Talon a slight edge because you go upside down 4 times, but the 200-foot drop of Steel Force is definitely a favorite.
Great. Well, there are other things besides rides and the water park here. What are some of the other things?
We've got a lot of live entertainment here. We used to only have 1 or 2 locations, but we added an indoor air-conditioned 600-seat theater where we're currently showing all-wheel sports. That's become a big favorite this year.
Great. Well, there's a lot to see, so where do you want to head next, Mike?
Well, why don't we head to the show?
All right, sounds good. Let's go. Well, Mike, here we are at the Good Time Theater, one of the other attractions within the park. Tell us a little bit about the theater and what goes on there.
Sure, we built the theater in 2009. It's a 600-seat IMAX rate. It's air-conditioned, so it's a good place to go when it's really hot out, or if a storm happens to come by, you can go in there to get shelter. Right now, we've got all-wheel sports, which they were on America's Got Talent. It's a very high-energy show, lots of tricks, bikes, skaters, things like that. Great place to go and take a time out from the rides.
Well, that's great. It looks like a big project, and we love to see that type of economic development activity happening here in the community. And it's good to see that things are always updating in the park. What are some of the other new rides or attractions or things that have come online in the past couple of years?
Sure, we've added a lot of rides to the park, starting back with Steel Force in 1997 that really put us on the map. We added Talon and Hydra as other large world-class roller coasters. And we've done smaller projects, such as the theater, family-friendly projects like Planet Snoopy. And we got to make sure we don't neglect Wildwater Kingdom and add some more slides and thrills, a new wave pool, things like that over there.
That's great. So obviously it's a pretty big operation. How many people work here?
We will hit around 2,500 employees when we hit our peak. In the winter, there's about 100 of us that stay very busy. A lot of people ask us what we do all winter, and we're very busy planning for the new year. Accounting, marketing, maintenance, all skills and trades are really used here at the park.
That's great. And so the rest of those individuals, they're seasonal employees. They come on in that summer for that peak time. It's a great entry gateway job for a lot of folks, isn't it? A lot of younger people.
Definitely. The educational aspect, we're training a lot of people in the Lehigh Valley what their first job experience is really like, training them skills such as showing up on time, what to do, how to ask for time off, and getting them used to working in the structure of a job.
That's great. And so now how long have you worked here, Mike?
It was my first job. I started here in 1992 as a games employee and just worked here all through high school. I got into supervision when I was in college. And when I graduated college, I got into management here in games, retail, food, and now I'm the parks general manager.
Yeah, and that's terrific. And so all of this economic activity that goes on here at the park generates a lot of tax revenue for the area. Tell me a little bit about the communities that benefit from that.
Definitely South Whitehall Township. The residents here feel the benefit of us and all the hotels and the tax revenue and employee sales revenue that come through. It definitely hits the Lehigh Valley and beyond.
That's great. And so a lot of folks, you mentioned hotels, so there are a lot of ancillary industries that benefit, whether it be restaurants or hotels. Are more people coming and staying for multiple days, or?
As we've grown the park, we've definitely seen an increase in our multi-day visits and also just in the season passes, the people that come day in and day out.
That's great. That's great. Tell me a little bit more just about what it's like running the park. What are some of the challenges you face here?
I think it's the same challenges you would have in any business. We've got to make sure we're taking care of our guests, taking care of our employees. We got to keep everything fresh coat of paint and clean and safe for everybody. And there's a lot of people, a good big team that it takes to do that job.
Yeah, absolutely. And so those things you talked about, the maintenance and the upkeep of the park, that requires some really skilled labor. So where do you draw on those people from? Where do you get your talent for mechanics or maintenance folks?
Sure, we work with a lot of local vocational programs in schools, and just like a first job might be somebody who's going to work in a game or in a food stand, we also bring on a lot of kids that'll work with our experienced staff, and it'll be their first job working in some of the maintenance areas.
Well, that's great. All right, we want to see more of the park. What do you want to show us next, Mike?
I think we should go to the water park. It's a beautiful day. I'm sure we'll see lots of people up there.
Sounds great. Let's go check it out. All right, Mike, we're here at Wild Water Kingdom. There's obviously a lot of enthusiasm and activity going on here. Tell us a little bit about the water park, because not every amusement park has a water park.
You're right. We are two parks for the price of one. Every ticket includes Dorney Park and Wild Water Kingdom. Our water park has 2 wave pools, 2 lazy rivers, 20 slides. We're going to work on some new product for next year up here to really kick this up and maintain our lead as a premier water park in the Northeast.
Well, that's great. And now what's the season on the water park versus the regular park? How does all that work out?
We kick off our water park Memorial Day weekend. This year we brought out Cullen Jones, who's a local Olympic gold medalist in swimming. He came out here to help us open. We're open through Labor Day weekend.
Oh, great. Well, we see the waves are kicking up here, and there are a lot of lifeguards on duty, and that safety is an important part of this water park. Tell us a little bit about the training that goes on to make sure everybody does stay safe here.
Sure, all of our lifeguards are Ellison Associates trained and certified. We do a lot to keep them up, and when you watch them, you can see them actively scanning the water and making sure everybody's safe.
That's great, and the water park on a hot day like this keeps everybody cool. And then at the end of the day, people often go back to the park, don't they?
Sure, there's a lot of things down in Dorney that we saw earlier and that we'll see when we go to Planet Snoopy.
Great, well, let's head over to Planet Snoopy. All right, well, we just checked out the water park, Mike. A great aspect to the park is the water park. You have Dorney Park, you have the water park, but there's some attractions within the park as well that specifically speak to kids. And here we are at Planet Snoopy. Tell us a little bit about this.
Sure, right here inside Planet Snoopy, we refer to this as a park within a park. It's an amusement park for the younger folks that come here. We've got a number of rides and attractions for kids that might be a little too scared or just not tall enough yet for Steel Force. It's a great place for families to spend, lots of benches for people to sit down, shaded areas, and it's a great place for the family to enjoy.
That's great. And so besides Planet Snoopy, what are some of the other attractions like that within this park?
Sure, we have Dinosaurs Alive, where we've got a path that goes through the woods, and we've got over 30 life-size dinosaurs that move and roar. It's a great educational aspect. You can learn the difference between a Tyrannosaurus and a Dilophosaurus and all those different ones.
Wow, that's great. So there are a lot of things for kids here, and when somebody brings their kids to the park, obviously they want to make sure that their kids are going to be safe. And from the state point of view, we inspect rides and do things on the safety front. Tell us a little bit about what Dorney Park does in terms of safety.
Safety is one of our company's cornerstones. It's very important that we keep everybody safe while they're here at the park. We inspect every single ride every morning before it opens, and in the winter we pretty much disassemble the ride down to scratch and build it up again just to make sure everything's good to go for the new year.
No kidding. So you actually take all of these rides apart in the off season and put them back together?
Absolutely. We have numerous shops set up around the park, and when you come through here, you wouldn't think that the park would ever be ready to open because it's really a bunch of skeletons around until we put them back together.
That's incredible. So tell me a little bit more about what goes on in the off season. What else besides taking the rides apart? There's got to be a lot of work that goes into getting the park ready for the summer season.
Oh, every year we have to start over. It's like having a grand opening of a store every year. We have to rehire all our staff, get them trained, find new leadership, new supervisors, and people who are ready to take over the park for us for the new year. We've got to buy merchandise, food, establish pricing, sell season passes. It never ends. We're busy year-round here at the park.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you're here in the community, Mike. Dorney Park is an institution. The water park provides a lot of great times for people in the summer to get out of the heat. But I think I'm ready to ride some rides. So what ride do we want to go on today?
Oh, why don't we go down and get Possessed a try?
All right, let's give it a go. All right, Mike, we're at the last stop on our tour of Dorney Park and Wildwater Kingdom. It's a ride called Possessed. It's one of the more exciting roller coasters that you have here in the park. Tell us a little bit about the ride.
Sure, this ride is almost 200 feet tall. It's going to launch us at up to 70 miles an hour. We're going to experience a spiral on one end and a holding brake on the other. Definitely a high thrill ride, but it is a blast.
Well, that's great, and the name Possessed makes me think of Halloween. Tell me a little bit about what you have going on in October.
Sure, we have a great Halloween event. This year will be Haunt 6, the 6th year. We transform the entire park. We hire up to 500 scare actors to come out here and make sure that you leave scared and can't sleep at night.
Well, that's great. We're glad you're hiring so many more people for the park. We enjoy the economic activity that Dorney brings to the area. So I thank you for the tour today. We had a great experience, great time seeing such a local business that's really prospering and brings so much to our community. So thank you for everything you do, and let's go get on Possessed. But I want to thank everybody at home for joining us here on Legislative Report. And at the end of the show, we're going to flash some information. If you have any questions about state government or anything our office can do to help, please contact our office. Thanks, and join us again for another episode of Legislative Report.